Hello and welcome back to another video with me, Eli Acheson-Elmassry. And today in this video I'm going to be working again with gouache paint, and I'm going to show you how I paint leaves. Very simply, it's this time of year. I'm recording this, it's the fall or the autumn, and if you're in the northern hemisphere, the leaves are turning now the most beautiful colours. And even if you're watching this and you're not in the northern hemisphere, or you're watching it another time, then there's usually some sort of vegetation, life form or fruit around you that you can use some of these skills for, and I may be taking you through some of the other objects that I'm working on. So I'm going to bring the camera around, as I have done, do a close-up here and talk to you about how we might go through this process in gouache today. Okay, so I've been working on something here which isn't the kind of art that I've been more frequently doing, which is exhibition art and experimental works. This is actually, I'm working towards something for an applied design which may be printed, become a print and be a print also on textiles at some point. And I'll just take that leaf away. I've been gathering some lovely leaves here and working with oak leaves, with cherry leaves, with occasional petals and things I find around me in the garden. And I'm going to begin another leaf on this design now, and this is a cherry leaf. I actually picked it yesterday and it's gone a little bit kind of dried out and crispy. But whatever leaves you've got around you, there's so much beauty in them. We've got some sycamore leaves here, oak, and really even things like dried seed heads. There's so many amazing things just in nature that you may sort of disregard and step over, but when you stop and really look at a thing, it's lovely to kind of celebrate it in a way by focusing on it in paint. So I'm going to turn this around, because actually I want to work and put this leaf down on this other side here, and each one of these articles probably took me about an hour each to paint, so I'm not going to run the video for the whole time, but I'm going to start it off and then we'll see how that goes. I'm going to choose a position that I want that to be in, and I'm going to paint with that. I'm working today, as I mentioned, with gouache, so I've got my trusty enamel plate here which I like to use. It's very nice and easy to clean and lightweight. I'm using some very small brushes. I've got size 3, size 1s, size 2s, and I'm also using a mixture of tubes, gouache tubes. You can buy them as tubes, 15ml tubes, that's 15 US fluid ounces, or slightly smaller. And I'm also working with a lovely paint box that I really adore, a gouache paint box. And gouache is very much like watercolour, as I mentioned in just the last video. It's a water-based paint. It has a great brilliance to it. You only need water to work with it, but it's capable of opacity, more opacity than a watercolour, and also some light overpainting. So I'm using it for this design, and if I just think about its position here, I'll probably zoom up a little bit closer in a minute on the camera, but I'm just going to decide how I want to put that, and I'm simply going to do the closest kind of observational study that I can, and I'm going to start at the top and work my way down. So this is really, I'm not going to use a pencil. I don't want to use any pencils, but you could start off by doing a drawing, especially if you haven't done much painting previously. If you feel like it gives you a little bit of confidence to try something out. I've had quite a bit of practice, so I just go straight into the paint. And there's a lovely, I'd encourage you to take the chance of going straight into paint, because the idea that you want to get it as accurate as possible kind of forces you to really concentrate the mind, and it brings a lovely sort of sense of not just colouring something in, but a pure sense of working, following the form almost. So I'm going to mix up quite a dark brown there at the top. I'm also using a little bit of violet, magenta in there, a little bit of black. I do sometimes use black with gouache. I almost never use it when I'm doing watercolours, but and I'm using a very, very small paintbrush here, size 2 to start off. So what I'm going to do is just really follow that form. And really, all I'm doing is just looking and painting and looking and painting. It's great single-minded focus, really. Now, coming down here, I'm ready to start working on the other areas of this. I'm going to mix a little of this nice cherry red with a little yellow. I've got to work with a little tissue here so that you can dab off if things get a bit wet on the palette before you apply to the paper. I'm painting here on a watercolour paper. It's a £140 weight paper, and it's a hot press paper, so it's very smooth. There is no particular grain on the paper. To make that a little bit thicker. So it's really excellent if you want to do something that renders very fine detail. Without that kind of, without the textural effects that you get with the papers that are the other kinds of the watercolour paper. Now I'm going to go down to an even size one brush here and add a little darkness in. The edge of this leaf has a really fine, like a saw edge on it. And I'm going to follow that around. In fact, I'm just going to pause that and bring the camera in even closer because I'm not sure that that's very clear for you on the video. Still experimenting a bit with this. I'm not yet sure if I come in even closer whether it retains focus, let's see. So I'm doing this in the way that you might if you were doing it with a pencil and the way children often do, is just draw an outline and then fill it in. Well, that technique can work quite well with this kind of close observational, closely detailed work. I'm absolutely loving doing this kind of painting again, which I hadn't done for a while, and been busy doing large exhibitions with large scale work, some of which was very detailed and working with my sculpture, but it's so wonderful just to come back sometimes and feel this very pure skill, which has, in feeling, I think when you do it, it feels just so beautiful, it just feels so glorious and lovely and quiet. When I'm doing this, I kind of lose all track of time, other thoughts, bothersome things, and it just, I don't know, kind of feel it really opens up your heart to appreciate these little things. This is one of many millions and millions and millions of leaves. You see I'm going all the way around this. There's got some interesting shapes going on here, holes, which I quite like. I'm just going to go back up to the top now. So I'll carry on doing that and follow the outline right through, but since I don't want to make an hour-long video, I don't know that I'm quite ready for that yet at this stage. I'm going to do a little bit of filling in there to show you how I might approach this next. So let's assume you've got the whole of that outline down, then I'm just going to come back. I'm going to choose a general dominant colour there and paint that in. Don't get too watery about it because it will fade a bit as it dries. to miss that hole there. And the idea here is really to go for a fairly dominant tone, a dominant colour, and then while the paint is still wet, to add in some other colour to blend it, mix the other colour. So I've add a bit of a darker shade into that now. You can see that's going to merge quite nicely. It's kind of darker brown. And then I think I'm going to use all of this off the paint palette today. I've got a watercolour, a gouache paint palette comparatively recently, and it's really lovely. These paints are really yielding. Okay, so since I'm not doing the whole thing in one go now, I'm going to soften the edge of that with a bit of water. So I don't get a hard edge, which will show through. So do that round there, and then bring in a bit more yellow up here, sort of yellowy orange here, which is a lovely one. Okay. Oh, excuse me, coughing. Going to complete this line actually. I'm going to go down here. In the comments I've had, sometimes people will say, well, no, you make something shorter, but you know, I think that I'm not into gimmicky short videos particularly, and I think that some things just need to be shown in their entirety. And painting, this kind of painting, is not to be rushed. Everything else can be rushed if life must be rushed, but not here, not here. So I'm blending in a little of the darker shade now, using some of that magenta again. A good tip for mixing colours when you want a darker shade of a colour, like you want a darker shade of red, is to mix a little bit of its complementary colour. That's the colour that would appear opposite on the colour wheel. I mentioned that in a previous video. And I can talk about the colour wheel actually, that might be helpful to do on some point. So I'm going to mix a little bit of red with that, sorry, a little bit of green with that. And the phone is now going. I'm not going to rush to answer it. So I could have closed the door. So I'm gradually going to darken up this areas now, add some layers in to this. Some things such as understanding how the paint will dry, and it will paint slightly alter colour as they dry. So it's quite good to get something like this done in one sitting because it can be hard to match a colour again. So I'm just building up gentle layers there, and I'm varying the tone as I see it within the leaf, so a little bit of orange there, and add a little bit of orange in as I go. Patches where it's slightly more yellow, add a little bit of yellow. And then I'll gradually work into that with all these tiny, tiny little details. So if you're in the mood to do some very detailed work, this isn't the kind of loose, very open, very free painting. This is much more studied, but it has its own kind of beauty in it. As I said, I feel really wonderful doing this. I think it's sort of, it's not meditation, but there's a similar quality of other thought goes away, which is in itself something very, very beneficial for us to do, whether or not your painting turns out to be something that you want to keep, or you're on a learning curve, but it's the stillness you obtain and the suspension of thought is really wonderful. Use a little bit of water, not too much, to blend that in. So I'm going to continue working with that, but as I won't run the whole video, and then we might have a post a picture up of the completed version. So when that's dried off a bit, I will paint in the veins of the leaves. So I'll let this layer dry out a little bit, but by the time I paint it around to here, I'll be ready to put in even some more details on this side. If you want to colour correct it, you see that's still wet enough, I can just actually dab that off a little bit with a wet brush and then dry it on my tissue there, so I can kind of take the paint back again, or if I feel it's drying a bit too dark. So as long as it remains damp, you can continue to make those sort of corrections. Yeah, we're so damp at the moment. I'm speaking in a nasally way. So I hope that that reads a little on the video. Do have a go. So I hope that's given you a little encouragement to try out painting some of these beautiful leaves we have around, or some other kind of plants. And if you have any comments or suggestions, or let me know if you found anything particularly helpful, or you'd like a little more guidance on, I'd be very happy to focus on that in another video. And as I say, I'll probably post a finished picture up on Instagram. If you want to make any requests or have any comments for me, do direct message me on Instagram. I'm Eli Acheson-Elmassry. And have a go with gouache. It's a fantastic, beautiful paint, and enjoy. Let me know how you get on. Thanks very much for watching.